Hey everybody. Well, I just finished making my tarp and I'm getting ready to seam seal it here. So I figured I would make a couple videos on, first off, how to make the seam sealer, and second off, how to actually seal the tarp. So this will be the first video on how to make homemade silicone seam sealer. And yeah, you can actually buy seam sealer from the store. It is known as SilNet. That's the only product I know, at least. And it works perfectly fine. It's what I used on my previous tarp, but it's a little bit expensive, not always easy to find, and going this route will actually give you much more seam sealer for about the same price, maybe a tiny bit more, but it'll go a much longer way, so it ends up being cheaper. And the SilNet, like I said, it works fine. It's a little bit thick, so it's hard to apply a really nice even coat. You kind of get globby coats, really thick coats. Doing it this method creates a little bit of a thinner liquid to apply, so it makes a cleaner coat and it looks nicer and it functions the same. So what you're gonna need, not too many things. First off, the heart of the operation is just 100% silicone. And this is GE Silicone 2. You want to make sure that you get clear, because that is, if you get a dyed silicone, it's going to make the tarp look ugly and it'll look pretty bad. The clear is, as it says, just a clear silicone that's not going to change the color or look bad on the tarp. And you want to make sure it's 100% silicone. This one is, I checked at the store, and there are other brands, but this is a pretty well known and safe bet if you want to get this type. So that's your silicone. You will also need some type of thinner to thin out the silicone so you can actually apply it without getting the mess and the globs, and that is where odorless mineral spirits come in. And if you've ever looked this up online, you can use pretty much any type of thinner, like turpentine or something else, but ultimately it's really nice to have an odorless one, because that's not going to stink up your tarp. And if you use turpentine or something like that, that smell is going to stay with you for quite some time. So odorless is the best way to go, and mineral spirits are one of the ways to do that. So that's really all this takes. I'm using a little 50-cent foam paintbrush that you can pick up at the hardware store, just for a better, smoother application. It might look a little better than the typical brush you might use. And then you're going to need a jar to mix the two products in. A glass is best, cleans up much better, and some way to stir it. Now it's going to be pretty thick, so it's going to be not quite so easy to stir by hand. So what I've done is attached a bunch of little zip ties to the end of this little pole here, just like that. You just kind of ratchet them around the pole as tight as you can. And the other end of this pole is going to go into the chock on this drill here, electric drill. Oh, wrong way. And this will make a fast and much more efficient stirrer for the silicone. So that's just going to go down into the jar to stir it up. Now, as far as ratios go, it's very simple. All you need is 1 part silicone to 1 part mineral spirits or thinner. So what I'm going to do for my application, I am pretty certain that 1 ounce of each is going to be plenty. So what I'm going to do, put this jar on the scale, tear it out to 0, squeeze in 1 ounce of silicone, and then pour in 1 ounce of mineral spirits, mix them up, and that'll be ready to apply to the tarp. Okay, so I've measured out 1 ounce of the silicone gel into this jar here, and I did that by zeroing out the scale with the jar on it, and then adding 1 ounce worth of silicone. Pretty obvious. And you can actually buy bigger tubes of this silicone, like a traditional caulking tube like you might see, and you can make large batches of this. And the reasoning behind that would be, you can actually design and build a ripstop nylon tarp, and then you can coat that entire tarp in this mixture and make it like a Silnylon tarp, so essentially make it waterproof. And then that also keeps you from having to seam seal the seams. Now, it's not the neatest way to do it, and it's not entirely easy. You kind of have to really squeeze it in there and make sure it gets coated well, but it's cheaper than buying Silnylon, so that's one way to do it. You might want to think about that if you want to make a cheap tarp. So anyways, I've got the silicone, 1 ounce of silicone, so because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, I'm going to put that on the scale, zero it out, and then pour in 1 ounce of mineral spirits. There we go. Close enough. Not quite 1 ounce, but that's all it takes. And now I'm going to mix it, so I'll do a quick cut of me mixing it here, and that'll be it. Okay, so I have mixed up the mineral spirits and the silicone, and they are a nice consistency now. This is the type of liquid you want to look for when you make this stuff. You want it runny but not too runny, and you want a nice consistent mixture. Make sure there's no pockets of silicone in there or unstirred mineral spirits. And you can see it's viscous, but it's not too viscous. It's not going to be really hard to apply. It's smooth enough that you can take a brush and kind of paint it over the seams like you'll need to. So that is how you make mineral spirit, or that is how you make silicone seam sealer at your house. And you want to use this fairly quick. It will start to set eventually, but I'd say you have a good maybe hour of use out of it. You don't want to keep it out in the sun, and you kind of want to seal off the jar if you're not using it immediately, but definitely try to use it pretty fast. So that's how you make seam sealer. Stay tuned, and my next video will be actually seam sealing the tarp.